Hello and welcome again to Politics and Societies of Southeast Europe in our section on language. In this section, I want to talk about the languages and language disputes in the region that we're concerned with in Southeast Europe, especially concentrating on the former Yugoslavia and on the language that was previously considered a unified language with variants, but is now more frequently considered a set of 4 and possibly more different languages, Serbo Croatian. So let's try to get a picture of what we're talking about here. Serbo Croatian, Bulgarian, Macedonian, these are Slavic languages. What Slavic languages have in common is a particular grammar. They are generally written using either the Latin or the Cyrillic alphabet. In some of them, the languages are written using both alphabets. The languages that we are concerned with are languages that are called South Slavic. So if you look at this slide here with the big green maps, these are the Slavic language groups. So there are the South Slavic languages, which include Bulgarian, Macedonian, Serbian, Montenegrin, Croatian, Bosnian, Slovenian, and so on. These are distinct from the East Slavic languages, which include Russian, Belarusian, Ukrainian, and so on. And these again are distinct from the West Slavic languages, which would include Polish, Czech, Slovak, and so forth. All of these are believed to have their origins in the Proto-Slavic languages, which, if you look at the map on the right, was the spoken language, dominant spoken language in the area of the map that is noted in red, and Slavic languages spread outward with the migration of people and the diffusion of culture and religion from that area into other parts of what we can think of as being the Slavic world over several centuries, over which time they acquired their variations, which eventually became codified into language. If we want to talk about Southeast Europe in particular, Yugoslavia would be an example of a state name that was taken from the name of a language group. So Yugoslavia means literally the land of the South Slavs, or people who speak South Slavic languages, although it does not include all of the people who speak South Slavic languages, or all of those languages. For example, Bulgarian is the dominant language in Bulgaria. It is a South Slavic language, but except for a few parts that you can see there in the east of Serbia and in the east of Macedonia, it is not the dominant language anywhere in Yugoslavia. So if we take a look at this map, and there is a legend there, and I know that the print is too small and you can't read it, but I think you'll be able to know by sight what the colors are indicating. The languages mostly, but not entirely, correspond to national borders. So in most of Greece, the dominant language is Greek, with some exceptions. In most of Turkey, it is Turkish, and so forth. The areas that are marked in different shades of green on this map are areas where different languages that were once thought of as being the one language, Serbo Croatian, are spoken. In some places you can see that the use of language corresponds very closely to national borders. So for example, Slovene is the majority language in almost all parts of Slovenia, except for a few where Italian is the dominant language, and not very much outside of Slovenia, except if you look at a few little bits of Austria, where it is the dominant language. We're talking about Slavic languages here, but if we want to look at the territory of what was once Yugoslavia, one thing we see is that it is not only Slavic languages that are spoken there. There are some places, as you can see in Vojvodina in the northwest of Serbia, where the dominant language is Hungarian, a few places in Serbia where Romanian or Bulgarian are the dominant language. A few places, particularly along the Adriatic coast, where the dominant language is Italian. A large part, including Albania and Kosovo, but not only Albania and Kosovo, also including parts of Montenegro, Serbia, and Macedonia, where the dominant language is Albanian. So to refer to Yugoslavia as the land of the South Slavs, based on a linguistic definition, is already at least a little bit incorrect and more than a little bit controversial, because there are groups who are symbolically excluded from this now. If we want to look more closely at the space where Serbo Croatian or variants of Serbo Croatian are the dominant language, let's move to the next map. Okay, the language that was referred to as Serbo Croatian and is now often thought of as being 4 different national languages, Serbian, Croatian, Bosnian, and Montenegrin, has several variants. The variants of Serbo Croatian do not correspond to national borders, and not all of the variants are represented in the name of a contemporary national language. So one of the big divisions is between, do you see that line between the pink segment and the green segment, or forgive me, it's this includes the green segment. So between the green segment and the yellow and the blue segments, this is a distinction between variants of Shtokavian. So we divide the language. The main colors here indicate Shtokavian, Kaikavian, and Chakavian. Shto, Kai, and Cha are different ways of saying the word what. So if you want to ask what is it, there are some places where you would say shtaye, some places where you would say shtoye, some places where you would say kaye, and some places where you would say chaye. These are regional distinctions. So Chakavian and Kaikavian are spoken almost entirely on the territory of what's now Croatia. Kaikavian in Zagorje and Chakavian in Dalmatia and Istra. They do not have the status of national languages. They're thought of as dialects of Croatian. The distinction between Eastern Shtokavian and Western Shtokavian are distinctions that mostly have to do with some differences in grammar and some differences in pronunciation, so that the vowel that is pronounced in the eastern part of this territory as e will be pronounced with an extra sound in the western part of this territory as ie. So if you wanted to ask for milk, in the eastern part of this map you would ask for mleko, in the western part you would ask for mlieko, unless you were in the blue part, in which case you would ask for mliko. That is, these are differences that can be thought of as relatively minor, and for the most part not interfering with mutual intelligibility. If you think about the number of variants in the spoken English language and the distance of these variants from one another, they are probably greater in several instances than the differences between different variants of Serbo-Croatian. But as is the case, the English that I speak, for example, is recognizably the English of the country of my origin, the United States. I'm living in the UK, and for the most part, I have absolutely no problem understanding the people who are surrounding me who speak the British or English variants of the English language. But if I wanted to make myself unintelligible to them, or them to me, it would be possible to do by putting an emphasis on the differences rather than on the similarities. Now, the political status of Serbo-Croatian was always an issue because of this identification of language and the distinctiveness of language with national identities and with national distinctiveness and with national character. And this especially becomes an issue in relations between the Croatian variants of the language, or if you prefer, the Croatian language, and Serbian variants of the language, or if you prefer Serbian. Why? Because of language policy. So in the first Yugoslavia, in the Kingdom of Yugoslavia that existed between the First and the Second World Wars, the Serbian variant of Serbo Croatian was absolutely dominant as the main language of administration and speech. Other variants were not suppressed, but they were not promoted either. During the period of the Second World War, when in Croatia, this state called the Independent State of Croatia, but under effectively the control of Nazi Germany is formed, they adopt a policy of enforced linguistic distinctiveness and attempt to create linguistic conventions that had as their main principle, first of all, the replacement of what were thought of as foreign words with what were thought of as pure Slavic ones, although this was unsystematic, but mostly on making spoken Croatian as different from spoken Serbian as possible. At the end of the Second World War, with the victory of the partisans and the Communist Party coming to power, a policy was developed, and this was a policy that was respected and applied unevenly, of absolute equality of all languages and all variants of languages within the state. So what you see here on these pictures are some signs. The first picture that you see is the sign outside the office of the mayor of Novi Sad. Novi Sad is a city in Vojvodina in Serbia. And you have the words Mayor of Novi Sad in Serbian, in Hungarian, in, I believe, Slovakian, and in Ukrainian. The second picture that you see is a street sign giving the names of places that you can go to if you take that exit off of the main road. And you can go to cities that are called in most cases by the same name in both Slovenian and Croatian, Pula being the exception, which is Pula in Croatian, Pulj in Slovenian, and Pola in Italian. In the others, the Croatian and Slovenian names are the same, so you have the names of the cities in those languages and in Italian. But this kind of multilingualism was absolutely conventional, was enforced and encouraged by law during the period of state socialism, with a few little exceptions. Not every language was visibly present in public spaces, and there was still a general preference for the variants of language that were used by the largest and probably dominant ethno-national group, that is of Serbian. And in most administration at the federal level, although there was legal equality for all of the official languages of the state of Yugoslavia, which included Slovenian, Serbo-Croatian, and Macedonian, as well as minority languages, including Italian, Albanian, and Hungarian, generally speaking, public communication was more likely than not to be conducted in Serbo-Croatian. So there was a policy of language equality that was respected to different degrees at different times and in different places.